Back in December of 2008 in LA, Steve Quayle was on the program, as he's been so often, and he brought us that pilot anonymously. Pilot did not want his name disclosed, and he talked about this very bizarre story of how he flew this dead giant out to some base in Ohio.
Describe exactly what you saw.
Well, when we came up, basically came outside, we had a normal 463L pilot loaded down with what they told us was a giant.
He talked about this giant being 1,100 pounds, anywhere from 10 to 15 feet long, and it was apparently shot somewhere in a cave in Afghanistan, but before it was shot, it lunged at several of our troops, our soldiers. It was just a bizarre story.
Well, I'll get to that. The bottom line was there was a patrol that was dispatched in a very rugged, remote area in Afghanistan, 2002, looking for high-value targets. So the patrol is dropped off by helicopter. They do their thing. They're supposed to check in. They don't check in. The second check-in time comes in. It doesn't happen. Third one.
They call them rally points.
Rally points. And they never met any of the rally points. So everybody's going where they all. Was it an ambush, a firefight? What's going on? A second patrol is dispatched, dropped off in exactly the same.
That's where our guy ended up.
Yeah, we'll call him a shooter. He's in the second patrol. The shooter's now in the second patrol, embedded with these guys. And they're following this goat trail. They're coming down in this very rugged area, looking for the lost patrol. And as they're coming down this goat trail, the shooter in front of him, he sees these like white fragment things on the ground, and he realizes it's bone. And also there's like meat attached to the bone.
There were bloody bones on the ground and torn up military equipment.
Like the radio.
Here that he recognized, but it was in pieces. And so what's happened here?
So they're going wild animal, were they butchered or something by Taliban? I mean, no one knows. So they come down the goat trail, and it ends in like this little plateau, like a ledge. And on the edge of the ledge, it goes down. It's a precipice, like 500, 600, 1,000 feet to the valley floor below. And they're sort of dispersed. Nothing's happening at this point. All of a sudden, out of the cave comes the thing of someone's nightmare. It's 12 feet. It's got a large spear, at least 10 feet tall, in its hand, a shield in the other hand. It's got flaming red hair. Later on, they counted the 6 fingers to this thing, 6 toes, double rows of teeth. And this thing is like ready to fight. These guys are absolutely petrified. Who wouldn't be? Can you imagine something 12 feet tall coming out of the cave, a nightmare that's not supposed to exist? All your training doesn't kick in, nothing. You're just stupefied. You're standing there, shocked.
All of a sudden, there's this really big dude standing in front of you, and actually up above them a bit. He was like on a ledge.
He's on a ledge, so it's even more pronounced.
So he was like looming over them.
Wow.
And he jumped down with this spear, and was really adept with it. It was really fast. I mean, this is one thing that he told us many times. He said, I didn't expect the speed and agility, because he said all of the CGI effects, and he mentioned this, that you see in movies of giants, they're always like kind of lumbering along.
Yeah.
That is not the way it was. This thing moved like the lance. It's like a 3-foot lance on a 10-foot pole, and the giant could swing around with this and bag you with the end of this pole as well. So he knew what he was doing and used to using it. The weird thing about it is, why has he got this ancient Roman shield? I mean, he was using really ancient tools, and he was dressed in a way that was, very ancient.
Very odd.
It was really strange.
So as the firefight happens, these guys are at the mouth of the cave. A giant comes out, and we could get into the way he sounds, but the part that always leaves me, and this goes back to where the shooter chokes and the shooter breaks down every time he tells the story. So they're dispersed, they're frozen, looking at this thing. One of the guys is named Dan. Dan breaks loose and he starts firing at this thing, at the giant. And this is where the giant moves with such speed and agility that it defies logic. How's this thing moving that fast? Before Dan can do anything, he's hoisted up on this petard, literally, in the air, one hand. And the giant, according to a shooter, isn't done. He's coming after more of them. At this point, the training kicks in with these guys. Someone, and the shooter thinks it might have been him, yells, shoot him in the head, shoot him in the head. And they just blast this guy's face apart.
He had big guns. He had semi-automatic weapons.
308s, 50 cals.
50s, and basically shot the giant in the chest and in the head. in the face and actually blew the bottom part of the giant's face off, where they could look into it. And when the giant was laying on the ground, he told me, he said it was like looking into a cave because his head was so huge.
The eyes were as big as a man's
You
fist.
could see his teeth in there, but it was really kind of a mess after that happened.
Double rows of teeth.
But this was like, a very smelly,
Wow.
weird.
Had never had a shower.
Yeah.
And
Well,
regularly killed and ate human beings.
He was a cannibal.
Yeah.
There's no doubt
And
that the
all
giant
the
was a cannibal.
locals knew that.
Wow.
The locals knew that he was. Well, the pilot, when going back to the original interview
With Steve Quayle.
on George Norrie's show, the pilot said that the whole thing, the whole package with the giant, the pallet he was on, and the rigging to hold him down weighed 1,500 pounds. He said so the pallet and the rigging weighed, about 400 pounds. So the giant weighed like 1,100 pounds by itself.
It's a really
And it was
good guy.
fast.
And he said it was like 12 feet long and kind of curled up.
We would come back to the base and we started hearing this rumor about a unit that they started calling this really tall person. At first I didn't think anything of it, and then come to find out that the person that actually was 3 times the size of a man had extra digits on their hand and digits on their feet and had red hair, and a special unit had come in and wanted this target. Well, we'd heard that they had staying inside a cave or the mouth of a cave. And it was common knowledge among the military to hear this.
And when you
It is.
Our contact said 2002 is when they shot this 15-footer or taller, and you're now in this, in the service around 2005. This word has gotten out, and what I find interesting here too is that if you're going to create a hoax, I get that, but you got details: 6 fingers, red hair, double rows of teeth, 6 digits on the toes, and of course that brings it right back into what we hear about in the biblical prophetic narrative, specifically the
And even going to Iraq myself and being near Haditha Dam and seeing the prisoners underneath the dam, and the prisoners would scream and there'd be this awful feeling underneath the dam, and then later finding out in the Bible that an angel's locked underneath there, where it talks about.
And this Haditha Dam is the Euphrates.
Is Euphrates,
and there's
correct.
an angel supposedly locked underneath the Euphrates,
Correct.
which is released in the book of Revelation. Bizarre. So you're actually at this site, and soldiers are being locked in prison underneath the Haditha Dam,
Correct.
and they're freaking out.
They were freaking out. They said they could feel it. In fact, the people who would guard them they would draw straws to see who would actually take them.
No one wanted to go down.
Nobody wants to go down. Going back to Afghanistan, we would hear these things. We would hear the locals talk about rumors of these giants.
What would the locals say? How would they talk about it?
They say that they lived in the caves and they would eat people, and
They were cannibals.
they were cannibals. And we, at the time, chalked it up to our United States as Bigfoot. And we realized that every culture had some kind of folklore, but to actually all of a sudden hear that a military unit had something.
Dan was dead. Okay. And why is a good man, probably one of the best men I know, now dead? Before I'd left, they were already starting what they call a 9-line, which is a medevac request. They're sending out a medevac request, then all of a sudden it's not a medevac request. All of a sudden we had a helicopter show up because, like I told you, it was a large precipice and a sheer drop. So the helicopter just came up from the drop. They had dropped netting, which is like cargo netting. It's like squares. We were told we had to bundle him up. And we get another bigger helicopter, but it's almost like a Jolly Green Giant used to look back in the day that could get, through this area. Because the mountains, you gotta remember, Chinooks could only go in certain places because they had enough lift. And so we got him on there. The thing was too big, we couldn't move it. It smelled worse than a skunk. A corpse that's been around for a while.
The hills of Afghanistan, how many troop members are you with?
We had 6 on my crew, and when we say hills of Afghanistan, for us, we did not fly into the wilderness. We actually flew into a base. I guess this thing was transloaded out of the mountains by a CH-47. But I could see that it did have the 6 fingers. I remember taking my foot up and placing it up next to its foot, and it was extremely large. We estimated it at about 12 feet, give or take. What I can tell you is the weight of the thing. Basically, it was approximately 1,500 pounds when it was getting on the aircraft. Now, if you take away the pallet weight and all the rigging that we had to hold this thing down, we figured it around 1,100 pounds.
Of course we're upset. That's a given, okay? We lost a very good guy. But add to that, you're discussing something that even in our after-action report, they're saying rewrite it. And we had to rewrite it the way they wanted.
How many fingers?
Six toes.
Six toes.
And the nails were weird because if you see somebody that ever has, I don't know what it's called, but it's
Like a fungus on
the nails, how they get pointy and they're like gnarly, that's what they look like.
We stationed or deployed to Qatar. It was a completely normal mission for us. We were not alerted for anything abnormal. It was in the middle of the day. I remember coming in, we opened the doors and unloaded the equipment that we had brought in, and then we were met at the aircraft by what we later on called the babysitters, but they kind of introduced themselves and said, hey, no cameras, nobody's taking pictures here, we're moving some high-value stuff. When the load got there, we're very, of course, curious to see what it was, because that's just the way you are when you're told that you're not allowed to have a camera. They say this thing had for maybe a day or two, and it was basically a guy, and this guy was extremely large. And when I say large, our pallets are basically, if I remember correctly, about 9 by 12 feet or so. This guy was laying in a fetal position on the pallet, so he filled the pallet. We estimated his size at approximately 12 to 10 feet tall.